think the way to get into reality is by running the edges. The idea that culture is not our friend, that we have been very naive about what culture is and how it is something designed for the convenience of the species. It plays with individuals, and it's almost as though culture is an enterprise self-organized to buy you off at the moment when you might be most dangerous to its values and goals.
The message that we're trying to read is the message we most fear to hear, which is that you must die to experience eternal life. A glacier rattles in the cupboard. The desert sighs in the bed. And the crack in the teacup opens, a door to the land of the dead.
I mean, we are all just swarms of personalities. The idea that a healthy person has a unified identity is just a silly idea. It's one of those incredibly weird simplifications that once made, everybody lines up and salutes, no matter how much agony it causes every individual. He said autonomous portions of the psyche escape the ego's control. Well, then what are we? Are we in fact not what we think we are?
It is a linguistic structure. You can decondition yourself sufficiently to actually step outside the cultural illusion. It's a breathtaking possibility because nobody knows what's outside the cultural illusion. I mean, Plato got it right. We are chained in a cave watching the flickering shadows of something. It's very interesting. The world is like a labyrinth, or as I said yesterday, it will be mastered by a feat of understanding somehow. It's like a riddle.
I have been in places where had I stayed there, they just would have warehoused me in some back ward and checked in once a week and cleaned me up, and that's where I would stay.
The danger is madness.
It's horrifying to think that some of these places you pass through for a few moments might persist for hours, days, weeks. And a week is a long, long time to wander in the land of the shades. This is the edge of paranoia.
What you have to do, what you must do, is learn to shut up. There's a compulsion to confess as well. This is not easy because there's something about these perceptions that have to be communicated, and yet when you communicate them, people are appalled.
The element of fear is always there.
There's this horrifying quote from Jung where he says, the psyche has 1,000 ways to terminate a life that has become meaningless. I don't know what was going on. Me trying to figure out, is he dead? Is he alive? What does this mean? Who am I? What's going on? And then there was a person who was obviously an inmate of the stranger wards of this
mental hospital who was washing the floor with this big mop and sort of waltzing around us with this crazy expression and leaning over and looking at me and looking at him. And I just didn't know whether, is this really happening? And if it is happening, why is it happening? And if it isn't happening, why do I think this is what's happening? And I just walked the streets for hours, and my mind was like spinning, just saying, something terrible has happened, something terrible, terrible, terrible has happened. And it took days. I mean, I was deeply spun by all of this crazy shit. I had friends in the city who would say, you know, in Manhattan, they would say, let's hit the streets and mess with people's minds. Well, you quickly discover there are people out there capable of messing with your mind, and more than your mind.
When you're out in the billows, you are against the power of mind, up against the power of mind to such a degree that you know that the entire enterprise hangs in the balance, that the mind actually holds the key to life and death, and that those parts of your control board which are normally masked from you are suddenly unmasked, and the buttons are there for you to manipulate to the degree that you understand them.
I noticed a rising anxiety that I couldn't control, and the anxiety was it was a generalized anxiety. It was a feeling, a strong feeling that something was wrong. And so then I would stop and deal with this feeling that something is wrong, and I would look around and reassure myself, nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. 30 seconds later, something is wrong. After about 4 or 5 times of this, and the loop was getting faster and shorter, and you keep looking around, and then it's there. You say, oh, well, it is there. And now I feel like it's not there. Oh, yes, it's there. Well, this is crazy making, and it may not sound so agonizing, but I found it to be as close to madness as anything I've ever experienced. And I felt at times that they'll just find me here, just gibbering. They'll just, throw a light net over me and take me by the elbow and lead me away, and that'll be it. Mind is a fragile construct.
There is an element of risk. I never tell people that there isn't.
There's also fear of madness.
It is a frontier of wholeness into which any person so motivated and so courageous as to wish to do it can go and leave the mundane plane far behind. In other words, it is a dimension of vertical gain that is real and is present in all of our lives, and that we do not acknowledge except as an anomaly because we have been told that it's an anomaly. We have been told that these perceptions have to be devalued. The rules and models that we've been handed by science and what's called common sense are just totally found to be inadequate. I simply mean when we go into solitude, when we go into wilderness, when we endure great travail in our lives, or when we put ourselves in extraordinary alien circumstances, then it's as though the membrane grows thin and the world loses its mundane character.
And instead, things previously mundane begin to become charged with psychic energy. They become carriers of meaning. They become carriers of meaning. This is very peculiar because everything is imbued with significance. That tree, that person, that greeting, that conversation is imbued with a kind of depth and significance that is satisfying. It's like living deeply, living deeply. But this phenomenon can proceed to a deeper level of introspection and relationship to the exterior. And in that case, then, this significance, which everything was previously seen to have, begins to compress or densify, and the world begins to dissolve into animate intelligence. Now, at this point, if you didn't bargain for this, you're probably very concerned about your mental condition. And if you aren't, your friends are. Because what you're saying at this point is, the rivers talk to me, the trees whisper in my ear. What you're recovering is the meaning. That's all, the meaning that is self-evident in nature, but that we block. The meaning is so pregnant in everything that it can actually articulate itself in your native English tongue. And, talking rocks, talking trees, talking boulders, we define this as pathology. But what's actually happening is that for the first time in somebody's life or experience, they are meeting the resident meaning in reality with its force, unblunted by conditioning and denial.
Fear is like a wind, and it blows through the mind. And what you must do is you must wait. And it cannot sustain itself unless you give it an object.
The relationship between the edge of knowledge and the wilderness, that's where the real boundary is. It's not a physical boundary. When they first began digging, like in the 14th century in Europe, they figured out how to dig mines deeper than they had ever dug before. Before that time, no mine in the world had gone deeper than 1,000 feet. And suddenly they were able to push these mines deep, deep into the ground in Bohemia, Switzerland, southern Germany. And they encountered for a couple of hundred years elf attacks and gnome sightings and attacks in these dark galleries of these deep mines. The question is, well, are there elves in deep mines in Europe? Well, apparently there were once. And then there's a more serious kind of bummer, which I call a cognitive hallucination. You could discover a tumor in your brain, or you could discover a demon living within you. Just allow it to blow through you.
As you start into the spiral, there is the possibility of falling from the golden track into eternal death. But it is only a crisis of a moment. It's a crisis of passage. People have feared to place themselves on the line and to actually wrestle with life and death out there in those strange bardo-like dimensions, not realizing that there is no other way to win true knowledge. I mean, it cannot be easily come by. There is no knowledge without risk-taking. Time is the moving image of eternity, as Plato said.
But I'm beginning to understand how no matter how hard you try, no matter how intellectually vigilant you are, it's very hard not to be a creature of your own time. Then we will have to go deeper